So, book review number 2. That makes it officially a series. And the second book that I've read, and basically this is just me talking about books I've just read, is Steven Pinker's The Language Instinct. Steven Pinker, the author, for those of you that don't know, is a cognitive scientist, principally interested in how we acquire language, and has done a lot of work on babies and small children to find out how they piece it all together. So that accounts for the first teaser question on the back: how do babies learn to speak? And there follows, why are there so many languages? Which, yeah, you have to admit, is a good question. Those who are interested in etymologies know that we go back to an Indo-European language which becomes a Proto-Indo-European language. Is it something that happened in one place and spread out, or did it happen, like so many inventions in inverted commas, at different parts of the world at the same time? Let's keep going. Do we think in our mother tongue? How do we think, in fact? Do you think in images? Do you think in words? Who decides what's correct English is the next teaser question. I'm very much in agreement with Pinker on that issue. You have to read it to find out. How did language evolve, etc, etc, etc. And that's to try to draw you into this. If you're not interested in phonetics and phonemics, I don't mean not interested, because this is pop science. This is for cleverer people than me to explain stuff to me. But in this case, it's stuff that I should know because I've been an English teacher and interested in phonemics and phonetics and languages and symbols. Anyway, it's that kind of book. That's what's on the menu. At the heart of it is an argument against an extended view of language, which was popularised by Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Wharf. Not exactly. The story is in fact told in one of the chapters. In a way, it was very progressive. It was a way of trying to show that there were no primitive savage languages, but the languages had different ways of looking at things. So in fact, we probably saw the world in a different way. This is known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, and is, like most science ever, now discredited, although I think a lot of people are still attracted to it. It's the idea that, for example, in Russian, that's a well-known example, they've got Sini is dark blue and Goluboy is light blue, the colour of the sky, but there isn't one word that encompasses the two blues. So does that mean Russians see a different way than people with a different language to express the colour, if you see what I mean? Glass is the same in Welsh. It's blue or green to an English speaker, I believe. And you find a lot of these things in different languages. The crossover point seems to be somewhere else. Traffic lights are a different green in Japan, for example, for some bizarre reason I remember reading. Is it because the Japanese respond better to a certain wavelength? Well, anyway, to all those questions, Pinker is saying absolutely not. Yes, the Eskimos had 40 words for snow, although they probably didn't. They probably had 8 or 9. Sapir was a brilliant linguist, and he did live with the Native Americans, but as happened with the case of Margaret Mead, later anthropologists discovered that the people that were telling stories, they were thinking, oh great, there's a great place to pull some foreigner's leg. So that has been discredited lately. But if we begin to think that that's not the case, then we are suggesting there is a universal grammar. That's the term that's popular. Pinker does his best to prove that something like it must exist, because the way we group words, even though Germans put the verb at the end, and even though the Russians don't have a present tense to be or any articles, we still group words into sentences in fundamentally the same way. That sounds a lot more boring than the book is, because Pinker writes very well and he likes to have humorous examples in among the usually interesting examples. Maybe a downside of the book is that he's writing from the point of view of somebody that's just setting off on a voyage, really. We're trying to explore the brain and find out exactly what controls what. how the brain works, in short. And there seems to be a hell of a lot of work still to do. Still, who better to ask than a guy who actually studies neuroscience, and also the part about how we make the sounds, the sort of medical part, I would say, about where your tongue goes and the plosives and the explosions of air. I wasn't very interested in that, but that's only a short part. If you've never read anything about phonology, for example, or just grammar or words in the style of Martin Gardner, who's quoted in this book, very popular books about English language, yeah, this would be a good place to start, assuming your reading age is 18 or above. But if you're more interested in starting to read a Pinker book, I would go for the one that changed my mind, which was a much more recent one, Enlightenment Now, where he argues for the values of the Enlightenment that he senses are falling by the wayside, and makes a very convincing argument. That was one that shifted my opinion on quite a few things. The Blank Slate is another interesting book, but that's enough Pinker recommendations. They're all recommendable. A lightish read for the non-specialist, but you'll still have to pause and scratch your head and reread certain pages if you want to grasp the point. So there you go then. Yep, another goodie. Steven Pinker's The Language Instinct. Thank you for listening, and now it's a fucking advert.
Hi, I'm CC Taylor, and I'm the author of this book. It's called Skip Delirio's Worst Ever Gig, The Adventures of a Stand-Up Comedian in Ancient Roman Times. And I've been asked to do three things. One is to read a bit, two is to explain a little bit about the book, and three, say who'd like to read it. So let's do the first one. I'm going to read the first paragraph now. Now here's one you might like. That's it there. And it's about a guy called Scipio, and it was his bad fortune that Caesar happened to be looking for a Scipio to lead his army in Africa due to a superstition that the Romans had. And this guy was just a lowly drunk, and he got pushed out in front of the troops, and that part is true. And then the three next chapters, I've just invented a Mediterranean fantasy of what happened, because we don't know what happened to Skip after this. And what was the third thing? Oh yeah, who'd like to read the book? Well, he would. He's in it.